Intro: there are moments in life when someone enters your mind and refuses to leave. You try to distract yourself, you work, you scroll endlessly, you talk to friends. Yet her face, her laughter, the memory of her presence keeps reappearing like an echo that refuses to fade. You begin to ask yourself, why can't I move on? Is it love? Obsession? Regret? Or something deeper? Something that reveals the hidden mechanics of desire itself. As Slavoj Žižek often says, desire is not a simple hunger. It is a question, what does the other want from me? When a woman occupies your mind so completely, it is not only her image that haunts you, it is the symbolic space she created within you. She becomes the embodiment of everything unfinished, unspoken, and unresolved in your own inner world. This speech is not just about romance. It's about the psychological architecture of attachment, the invisible patterns that keep you thinking of someone long after they're gone. If she doesn't go out of your mind, there are real reasons. Not random ones, not mere nostalgia, but 5 profound truths that reveal the nature of your inner self. So, today, inspired by the thoughts of Slavoj Žižek, the philosopher of desire, contradiction, and truth, we will uncover those 5 real reasons why she lingers in your mind. Not to romanticize the pain, but to understand it, to transform it into power, awareness, and inner freedom. Because the first step to emotional liberation is to see your feelings not as weakness, but as messages from your subconscious, from the deepest parts of who you are. Let's begin. The echo of incomplete meaning. Zizek often says that love is not about perfection, but about the gap, the missing piece that awakens our desire. When someone doesn't go out of your mind, it's not always because of who they were, but because of what they represented in your personal narrative. You see, every human being carries within them an unfinished story, a wound that still seeks closure, and sometimes, a person enters your life at the exact moment when that wound is most sensitive, when your mind is searching for something to complete its sense of meaning. That person becomes the mirror of your missing part. Not because she truly was your other half, but because she played a role in the story your heart was trying to tell. So when she's gone, your mind doesn't crave her, it craves resolution. As Zizek explains through Lacanian theory, desire is born not from satisfaction, but from lack. You desire not the object itself, but the idea it awakens in you. In this sense, she remains not because she was perfect, but because she made you feel something that seemed to define you. You replay the moments, the smiles, the silences, the words unsaid. Not because you miss her presence, but because your mind is still chasing the meaning behind them. This is the first real reason. You cannot let go because she became a symbol of something you still haven't understood about yourself. She was never just her. She was the embodiment of your emotional riddle, and the brain cannot rest until it deciphers its mystery. The addiction to emotional intensity. There's a strange irony in human emotion. We don't always miss the person, we miss the feeling we had when we were with them. The rush, the unpredictability, the excitement, even the pain, becomes a kind of emotional drug. Zizek calls this the traumatic pleasure of love, the paradox where pain and joy become indistinguishable. When you think of her again and again, your brain is not simply remembering. It's reactivating the same emotional circuits that once made you feel alive. You're not trapped by her image. You're trapped by the chemical memory of intensity. Every text message, every glance, every late-night thought was encoded into your nervous system, and now when she's gone, the mind seeks to relive that stimulation. It's not unlike addiction, not to her body, but to the emotional voltage that existed when she was near. This is why silence feels unbearable. Because silence for the addicted mind feels like withdrawal. You start to look for traces of her, in songs, in old photos, even in strangers' faces, because your subconscious is trying to trigger the lost emotion again. But here lies the deeper truth. The feeling you're chasing is no longer about her. It's about your own dependence on emotional drama. Zizek would say that in our modern culture, we mistake emotional chaos for authenticity. We think that if something doesn't hurt, it isn't real. So we cling to the people who made us feel the most, even when they left us the emptiest. When she doesn't go out of your mind, it's not proof of eternal love. It's a sign that your emotional identity was built around the storm she created. And the only way to move on is not to erase her memory, but to detach from the addiction to intensity itself. Ask yourself, do you truly miss her? Or do you miss the emotional electricity that made you feel significant, alive, and real? Until you answer that question honestly, she will continue to live inside your mind not as a woman, but as an emotional pattern that you keep replaying. The illusion of destiny. There's something dangerous yet deeply human about how we interpret powerful emotional experiences. When we meet someone who shakes us to our core, we often mistake intensity for destiny. We say, it must mean something. We think, this can't just be coincidence. But Slavoj Žižek reminds us that love often feels like fate precisely because it is a disruption, a rupture in the ordinary flow of life. It feels supernatural, but in reality it's an accident that exposes a deeper truth. You see, your mind loves patterns. It wants every emotional event to have purpose, every heartbreak to have meaning. So when someone enters your world and leaves an unforgettable mark, your psyche builds a narrative. She was meant for me. It's a story of comfort, not truth. The illusion of destiny is one of the strongest mental cages. It convinces you that the connection was divine, that no other love could ever compare. But what if the truth is simpler, even more profound? What if that woman appeared, not because of cosmic design, but because you were ready to confront a part of yourself that only she could awaken? Zizek often argues that we give our pain metaphysical meaning because it's easier than facing randomness. We turn chaos into story. But the moment you stop searching for fate, you begin to see that she was not your destiny. She was your lesson. Maybe she appeared to reveal how deeply you can feel, how much you can lose, or how strongly you can rebuild. That doesn't make the connection false. It makes it sacred in a different way. When she doesn't go out of your mind, it's not because the universe made her your soulmate. It's because your soul recognized in her something it needed to understand, and that lesson is still incomplete. Destiny is not something that binds you to someone forever. It's the moment that opens your eyes to who you truly are, and until you learn what her presence was meant to teach you, her shadow will remain in your mind, asking quietly, have you understood? There's the ego's refusal to lose. Let's face a darker truth. Sometimes the reason she won't leave your mind is not love, not destiny, but ego. We do not just miss people, we miss how they made us feel about ourselves. Žižek says that the ego constructs fantasy to protect itself from the unbearable truth. When someone leaves, the ego feels humiliated, not only because it lost affection, but because it lost control of the story. So it begins to rewrite reality. If she still thinks of me, I've won. Or, if I can't forget her, it must mean she was special. But the mind's obsession is often the ego's camouflage. You keep thinking of her not because she's unforgettable, but because your self-image cracked when she walked away. The ego cannot stand unfinished business. It demands closure, validation, victory. Every time your thoughts wander to her, the ego whispers, she should have seen my worth. She should regret it. She should have stayed. And with those thoughts, You unknowingly feed the flame of obsession, because your mind turns pain into a psychological game of who lost more. But Žižek reminds us that real strength is not in winning the imaginary battle of love, but in surrendering the illusion of control. You can't force someone to stay, just as you can't force memories to fade. You can only let the truth dismantle the ego. She chose her path, and you must now choose yours. If she doesn't go out of your mind, maybe it's because your ego hasn't accepted defeat. And yet that defeat is not failure. It is transformation. Every ending humiliates the ego but liberates the soul. When you stop asking, why did she leave? And start asking, what part of me can grow from this? The energy changes completely. You move from pain to wisdom, from resistance to release. As Zizek often puts it, love doesn't complete you. It divides you, exposes you, and in that exposure, the real you begins to emerge. The repetition of emotional patterns. If she doesn't go out of your mind, maybe she's not the first. Maybe she's part of a pattern. Because as Zizek explains, the unconscious repeats what is unresolved. We don't fall in love with people. We fall into the same emotional structures again and again, until we finally wake up. You might believe she was unique, but look closely. The same pain, the same confusion, the same longing may have existed in your past loves too. The faces change, the voices change, but the feeling is hauntingly familiar. That's not coincidence. That's the repetition compulsion of the psyche. A deep urge to recreate the same wound, hoping to finally heal it. So your mind holds on to her not because she's irreplaceable, but because she fits the emotional puzzle that's been repeating since your earliest experiences of love, rejection, or neglect. Žižek would say that our fantasies are like broken records. They replay because they promise resolution, but never deliver it. We think this time will be different, this time it will end well, yet the story always collapses in the same way, leaving the same scar. If she's still in your mind, it might mean your subconscious is trying once again to fix the original wound through her memory. That's why forgetting feels impossible, because, deep down, it's not about forgetting her, but about confronting the core pattern she represents. Freedom comes when you recognize this pattern for what it is. Not a curse, but a signal. A sign that it's time to break the cycle. Once you see her not as the one who got away, but as the one who showed me what I keep repeating, her presence begins to lose its power. You stop asking why she left and begin to understand why your mind can't stop chasing the same kind of pain. The fifth and final stage, which we'll explore next, is where everything shifts. Because awareness without action is just knowledge. But once you apply understanding, once you confront yourself with radical honesty, that's when you truly let go. The ghost of the idealized image. There's a cruel trick the mind plays after loss. It doesn't remember the person as they were. It remembers them as an idea. You no longer see her clearly. You see a version your heart built, a perfect, uncorrupted image that never truly existed. Žižek often warns that love blinds us not because we fail to see flaws, but because we invent perfection where it never was. We don't fall in love with a person. We fall in love with the fantasy they represent. And when she's gone, that fantasy refuses to die. You replay her words, her laugh, her presence, but you edit the memories subconsciously. You remove the conflicts, the silences, the imperfections, until all that remains is a cinematic version of her, a ghost sculpted from nostalgia. You become addicted not to her but to the illusion of her. That's why forgetting feels impossible. How can you erase something that was never real to begin with? You are chasing a projection of your own longing, not the living, breathing woman who once stood before you. Žižek describes this beautifully when he says, The greatest tragedy of love is that we desire what never truly existed, an ideal that only our fantasy can sustain. And this is your fourth real reason. She doesn't leave your mind because you haven't mourned the illusion. To truly move on, you must separate the fantasy of who she was from the reality of what you shared. You must dare to see her, not as perfection, not as the one who completed you, but as a human being who entered your story, taught you something, and left. Nothing more and nothing less. The liberation begins when you allow the fantasy to die, because when it does, when the ghost finally fades, you realize the power you gave her was never hers to begin with. It was always yours. The mirror of the unhealed self, here lies the final truth, the deepest of all. If she doesn't go out of your mind, it's because she reflected back to you the parts of yourself that you still haven't accepted. Zizek says that the other, the person we love, functions as a mirror that reveals our unconscious. Through them we see both our beauty and our brokenness. She mirrored your hopes, your insecurities, your need for validation, your hidden fears of abandonment. When she left, she took with her the reflection. And that's what your mind cannot let go of. Because without her, you no longer see yourself as clearly. You feel a strange emptiness not because of her absence, but because her presence had defined who you thought you were. That is the ultimate attachment, when love becomes a mirror instead of a connection. You didn't just lose her. You lost the version of yourself that existed in her eyes. The one who felt desirable, understood, seen, loved. But now Žižek would challenge you to confront the real philosophical act, to become whole without the mirror, to build an identity that doesn't depend on being reflected by another. That is what true independence, true selfhood truly means. If she doesn't go out of your mind, it's because there's a part of you that still seeks external validation, still fears being unseen. And until that wound is healed, every new face will carry a trace of her shadow. So the question is no longer, how do I forget her? The question becomes, what part of myself am I ready to finally face? Because once you meet that part, once you look at yourself without needing her eyes to see you, she will disappear naturally, gently, like mist dissolving in morning light. The freedom of understanding, so my friend, if she doesn't go out of your mind, remember, there are real reasons, but they are not curses. They are invitations. Invitations to understand who you are, what you desire, and what you must finally release. Reason 1, because she symbolized the unfinished meaning within you. Reason 2, because you became addicted to the intensity of emotion. Reason 3, because you believed in the illusion of destiny. Reason 4, because your ego refused to lose. Reason 5, because she was the mirror of your unhealed self. These are not punishments. They are portals to deeper self-awareness. As Zizek says, love reveals the truth of our lack, and in that lack we find the possibility of transformation. To forget her is not the goal. To understand why she remains, and that is enlightenment, because once you understand, she will no longer haunt you. She will become part of your philosophy. A teacher disguised as heartbreak. You will thank her silently, not with bitterness but with peace, because she played her role, and her chapter is complete. And one day you will wake up, see the morning light, and realize the space she once filled has become freedom. A freedom born not from forgetting but from understanding. As Žižek would smile and say, to love is to be wounded, but in the wound, we meet ourselves. So let her memory rest. Let your mind be still, and walk forward, not as the man who lost her, but as the man who finally found himself.